Hello and welcome to Why Medics Matter, a podcast for doctors, by doctors, brought to you by Doctors Training. We are your hosts. I'm Dr. Amy Burbridge.
And I'm Dr. Simon Fraser. Great to catch up with you, Amy. I've spent the last week reflecting on really quite an inspirational talk from Dr. Veto talking about leadership. And one of the things I took away from that session more than anything was how we start a leadership journey with a lot to learn. And maybe we don't always get it right at the beginning. And as we progress through our leadership journey, probably one of the most important skills to master is ourselves. That what's called emotional intelligence. So I thought it'd be a really nice opportunity just to unpick some of those things and have a bit of time today talking through what is emotional intelligence.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important. And actually, it's not something we tend to talk about very much at the start of our leadership journey. We hear about the concept when we already in a leadership position, or maybe when we get into difficulties or a challenging situation, then we start to think about it. But at the beginning, it's not something, to be honest, I was that aware of.
No, I'd agree entirely. I think in medicine, we are fantastic at training really skilled technicians. You know, people get the end of their training or their SAS career, and they're fantastic at their clinical job, but it's that self-mastery element. And if you read the work of Daniel Goleman, which I've been interested in over the last 5 or 6 years. He was a psychologist at Harvard, and he did a huge amount of research which demonstrates that high emotional intelligence is what predicts success, particularly in leadership in teams, as opposed to high IQ or intelligence. And we need to have a way of developing that for our journey. Why? Well, medicine's high stakes, it's challenging, it's about relationships, and we've got to, if we master emotional intelligence, we get better communication, better decision making, we can support our colleagues and team in a much more effective way.
So if I'm coming to this as somebody who knows absolutely nothing about emotional intelligence, how would you describe it to our listeners?
Yeah, that's a real great question. Emotional intelligence has two sort of angles. One is you, self, and the other is others. And it has, Daniel Goleman describes it as the ability to understand and manage your own emotions, whilst also understand and influence the emotions of others. And if you look at the dimensions he describes first self-awareness. So how well you know yourself, how insightful you are, how reliable that self-assessment is, the ability to self-manage, and motivation, social awareness. And people, well, what does that mean? It's the ability to read others, to understand other people's emotions, often what we call empathy. And then the latter element is social skills, our ability to influence, our ability to negotiate, our ability to be visionary, all those skills that often aren't very mature through our training, and we learn through trial and error. And I've certainly learned through trial and error myself. I would describe myself as somebody who's been incredibly self-aware, but at times struggles to self-manage. I tend to wear my heart on my sleeve, and that's probably got me in trouble in times in my leadership roles, but it's actually at times been my strength because I've been prepared to stand up and challenge things. But as I've got older and a bit wiser and more mature, it's learned to rein them in. And I think when we spoke to Yvette last week, she was talking about what advice she give herself as a new leader. It would be that she was probably more too direct originally, in that ability to control and to learn and to be vulnerable, really. So I think it starts with self, and I've been on this mastery journey over the last 10, 20 years. And I suppose what puts fire in my belly, what gets me out of bed in the morning, is to help others to learn those skills, to learn and understand emotional intelligence, but also the skills of influencing as a leader.
There's a couple of things I want to pick up on there. Number one is, it's really, a lot of us are self-aware, but that ability to self-manage, often in stressful, high-pressure situations, it just goes out of the window.
Yeah.
We forget how to take a step back, take a deep breath in. And I'm very much like, in these situations, I just go off on one. And everyone's like, oh, she's gone again. Oh, God, Amy's off. But I do also think I am emotionally intelligent, but I sometimes lose the ability to see that sometimes. And then, secondly, can you teach somebody how to be emotionally intelligent?
Well, do you want some good news? Do you want the good news and the bad news?
Go on.
The good news, the answer to that is yes, you can. Okay. So Daniel Goleman describes different leadership styles. Okay. So they're all based on different emotional intelligence competencies and different capabilities. So the 6 styles he describes, one is visionary, ability to set direction and get people to follow you, which is a very positive leadership style. Coaching is really important. Affiliative, which is about people, about caring, putting people at the heart of your decisions, your team. Diplomatic, pace setting, which is pushing hard, and then the command and control. Now, the most effective leaders use all of them at the right time, the right place. Okay. One of my personal learning journeys is when I became a coach. So I've done a lot of leadership roles. I was director of education by Trust for 9 years. My predominant style was a pace setter. I drove things fast. I wanted to achieve, and that probably wore people out in the team over the years. And it caused fatigue and at times probably frustration, friction. When I finished my formal leadership roles, I was really fortunate to train as a coach. And most people think they're good listeners. And that what we know from all of our workshops, people are terrible listeners as doctors. We're fixers, we're problem solvers. We want to make things better. And that's really not a great way. So I actually, when I did my coaching qualification for Yorkshire and Humber, which was 6 days, I learned to listen. And I had to sit on my hands.
That's what I'm doing now.
No, absolutely. So if you sit on your hands, anybody there listening who thinks you're a good listener, next time you're having a really meaningful chat, work how long it takes to open your mouth. Yeah. So I learned coaching was a really powerful. My wife even said, gosh, you actually learned to listen when I came home. And it was one of the most powerful things. So that was something I had to work really hard on. And if I'd have learned that at the start of my journey, I probably wouldn't have had some of the episodes of friction that I've had. So that is an exact example. By learning to listen, you increase your empathy, which is the social awareness of others, which then you can influence in a much more effective way. And so that's the good news. Okay. The bad news is it's like saying, if I go to the gym on the 1st of January, will I be fit on the 2nd of January? No, because we have natural styles. We have predominant settings, and particularly under stress, we go to those predominant settings. Yeah. So if you want to get fit, you've got to commit to going to the gym 3 or 4 times a week. And you've got to do that for 2 or 3 months before you start seeing the gains. So if you want to develop emotional talent, you want to be a better listener, better influencer, if you want to learn to self-manage, you've got to consciously do that. Okay, you've got to practice it, and using reflective diaries and things are a really powerful way. Using a coach and a mentor, and also trying to get a realistic feedback. Is our self-perception reality? So that's the good news. Yes, the bad news is no. But if you're committed, and if you want to be a great leader, when we talked with Yvette, self-mastery was one of the key things, and being kinder, as she said.
I just want to touch on a couple of things that you brought up there. Number one is realistic feedback. Now, I often ask for feedback at work. How did I do? Oh, it was amazing. Best thing I've ever seen. But it clearly wasn't. It was dreadful. How can we in the workplace get realistic feedback? Because it's really hard to give somebody open and honest feedback that is meaningful, because we're so scared of upsetting people.
And a lot of that involves trust.
Yeah.
Okay. And having critical friends. I've been really fortunate to work with some amazing colleagues that are comfortable giving me the feedback. I said, Simon, you went too far that time. That wasn't right, And if it's done with radical candor, which is, I want to help and I'm going to be honest. But they're hard conversations because people have fear about conflict, fear about disagreement. So there's probably only a handful of people that can comfortably give you that feedback, but it's being prepared to listen and giving people opportunities and say, right, be honest with me. What, this is how, and I think most of the time we know when we've stuffed up or we're not got things quite right. And we will ask our friends to give us the reassurance. And actually what we want is them to give us the hard answer. So, and then we can motivate to get the tools to, next time in a situation, walk away, whatever you do, knowing when you're in the amber. So often when we are talk about self-management, when you're in the red, that ability to self-manage is gone. So you actually need a way of picking up when you're in the amber, when things are less on the edge, and then doing something then rather than the heat of the moment. So that would be my top tip on getting feedback.
Just one last question then. If I'm in a situation where I can see that the other individual has completely lost self-awareness, has completely lost an ability to self-manage, and I really want to intervene and say, this is not working, or this is not happening, or everybody in the room's upset, but I feel sort of like almost paralyzed, I guess. I don't feel like I can do that. If I'm in that situation, how can I help others recognize these pillars of emotional intelligence in themselves?
So I think it's about when you talk, there's some lovely work on resilience, which is talks about what happens to us when we are struggling. And often the quote is, first we become unfriendly, then we become stupid. And when I see somebody who's struggling, who's unfriendly, who's, my question is, what's going on for them? Yeah. And my first question is, are they okay? So I think it goes back to the cup of coffee conversation that we talked about with Anna, which is sitting down with somebody and saying, can I have a cup of coffee? Are you okay? I want to give you I want you to make you aware of something. I don't know if you're aware, without judgment. But it's decided if you're the right person, it is the right place. So I think there's generic stuff we can do, which is about learning, studying, learning about emotional intelligence, reflecting. I do a lot of workshops and working with doctors from different backgrounds, and sometimes it's the first time we've explained this concept. You understand the facets, it just hasn't been put in this language. And I've seen in some of the dental programs, they're using self-assessment tools. And I think all of this stuff should be part of a broader development, not just the technical elements of medicine. So I'm a big believer on teaching and just reading about. There's so much resources out there on the internet for people to access.
Thank you so much, Simon, for sharing your insights into emotional intelligence. It certainly prompted me to go away and read a little bit more. And I think I'm definitely will always be working on my self-management skills. So.
Me too.
Any closing words from you, Simon?
No, just say thank you. We're triggered by this topic from listening to Yvette last week, and looking forward to catching up next time.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for listening.